My name is Maya Torres, and I've been working at MediQuick Pharmacy for exactly 9 days. Well, that's what my employee badge says anyway. The little plastic rectangle clipped to my burgundy vest claims I started on October 2nd, which feels right when I think about it, except I can only clearly remember my first shift, the training video about workplace safety, and then somehow I'm here, standing behind a chipped Formica counter at 1:45 in the morning, watching a flickering fluorescent tube buzz like an angry wasp overhead. The store is a 24-hour operation wedged into the corner of a strip mall that's been slowly dying since before I was born. During the day, MediQuick does decent business. Elderly folks picking up prescriptions, parents grabbing children's Tylenol, the occasional lunch rush of people buying energy drinks and terrible sandwiches from our fresh food section that's anything but fresh. But after midnight, the place becomes a mausoleum with automatic doors. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just empty. The kind that makes you aware of every sound your body makes, every shuffle of your shoes on the linoleum, every breath. I'd applied for the position because the overnight shift paid $2 more per hour, and because my apartment walls are thin enough that I can hear my neighbor's television until past midnight anyway. Sleep wasn't happening, so I figured I might as well get paid for being awake. The interview lasted maybe 10 minutes. The district manager, a tired-looking woman named Patricia with a coffee stain on her blouse, had asked me 3 questions. Could I work nights? Did I have reliable transportation? Had I ever been convicted of a felony? No. Yes, no. You start Tuesday, she'd said, sliding a W-4 form across her desk. The training had been minimal. Dennis, the night shift manager, was supposed to show me the ropes. He was a guy in his late 40s with the kind of face that looked like it had been disappointed for so long it forgot how to be anything else. Receding hairline, reading glasses perpetually sliding down his nose, a coffee mug that said, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right," that he refilled from the ancient Mr. Coffee machine in the back room at least 6 times per shift. Register's pretty standard, he'd told me that first night, his voice carrying the flat affect of someone who'd given this speech 100 times before. Scan items, customer pays, give them their receipt. Pharmacy counters automated after 11. Prescriptions go in the pickup bin, and people use the kiosk to retrieve them. We don't have a pharmacist on staff overnight anymore, so don't worry about that section. He'd shown me how to clock in using the fingerprint scanner, how to override price discrepancies, where we kept the bags and receipt paper. The stockroom smelled like cardboard and that specific industrial cleaning solution that all retail stores seem to use. Vaguely lemony, vaguely chemical, entirely artificial. The break room had a humming refrigerator covered in OSHA compliance posters and a microwave that looked like it had survived a small explosion. Stocking happens between 12 and 4 when it's slowest, Dennis had continued, handing me a box cutter with a bright orange safety guard. Delivery truck comes at 11:30. I'll handle receiving. You just get the shelves organized. Cosmetics, first aid, and seasonal stuff are your priority sections. That had been my first shift, or I think it was. The memories have this weird quality to them, like watching a video where the audio is slightly out of sync with the picture. I remember doing it, but I can't quite feel it, if that makes sense. Tonight, my second overnight, or maybe my 10th, the timeline is slippery, Dennis had been even more distracted than usual. He'd spent the first 2 hours in the back office, door closed, the sound of a one-sided phone conversation occasionally drifting out. I'd handled the evening transition alone, checking out the last few day customers, a college kid buying energy drinks, a middle-aged man getting a prescription who seemed annoyed the pharmacist window was already closed. The store had 17 aisles, each marked with yellowing plastic signs hanging from the ceiling. Aisle 1, vitamins and supplements. Aisle 2, pain relief and first aid. Aisle 3, cold, flu, and allergies. And so on, through household goods, personal care, and finally the refrigerated section at the back with overpriced milk and sad-looking prepared salads. At midnight, I'd been restocking aisle 6, digestive health, which was exactly as thrilling as it sounds, when Dennis had emerged from the office. He looked worse than usual. His shirt was untucked on one side, and there was a quality to his eyes, something jumpy and exhausted all at once. "Maya," he'd said, and I'd nearly dropped the box of fiber supplements I was holding. "Jesus, you scared me." "Sorry." He didn't sound sorry. He sounded distant, like his mind was working through a complicated math problem. "Look, I need to head out early. Family emergency." "Oh, is everything—" "It's fine. It's handled. You'll be fine here." He was already walking toward the back, toward the employee exit. Then he'd stopped, patted his pockets, and pulled out a laminated card about the size of an index card. "Almost forgot. Night shift protocols. You should keep this on you." He'd pressed it into my hand. The card was slightly warm, like it had been sitting near something hot. The lamination was the cheap kind, with tiny bubbles trapped under the surface. At the top, in bold Arial font, it read, "Media Quick Pharmacy, Night Shift Protocols." "What is this?" I'd asked, but Dennis was already pushing through the back door. "Just follow them," he'd called over his shoulder. "Makes things easier." The door had clicked shut, leaving me alone with the buzz of the lights and the card in my hand. That had been 47 minutes ago. Now I stood behind the register, the store sprawling out before me in all its fluorescent glory. Every shelf perfectly aligned, every product facing forward with labels out. The mindless busywork of retail made physical. Through the windows at the front of the store, I could see the parking lot, mostly empty. A few cars belonging to the 24-hour gym next door, one streetlight casting an orange sodium glow over the faded parking space lines. I pulled the protocol card from my vest pocket and read it again. The list was typed in the same utilitarian font as the header. 1. Never make eye contact with customers wearing hospital gowns. 2. If someone asks for aisle 7, direct them to aisle 4. 3. Do not acknowledge the pharmacist after 3 a.m. 4. Keep the protocol card on your person at all times during shift. 5. If a customer's receipt prints blank, smile and wish them a good evening. 6. The cleaning crew does not require assistance. 7. Expired medications should be placed in the red bin, not the yellow bin. 8. After 4 a.m., stay behind the counter unless restocking. It read like the setup to some internet creepypasta, the kind of thing bored teenagers write to scare each other on forums. Corporate bureaucracy meets supernatural rulebook. I'd laughed when I first read it, assuming it was Dennis's weird idea of a joke, some kind of hazing ritual for the new girl. Except Dennis hadn't been laughing when he gave it to me, and that look in his eyes. I shook my head, slipping the card back into my pocket. Probably nothing. Probably just weird retail humor. God knows every job has its strange traditions. It's inside jokes that make no sense to outsiders. The automatic doors hissed open. I looked up, instinctively putting on my customer service smile, the one that doesn't reach your eyes but shows enough teeth to be considered polite. An elderly woman shuffled in, moving with the careful, deliberate steps of someone whose bones have begun to betray them. She wore a beige cardigan despite the mild October weather, orthopedic shoes, and carried a large canvas tote bag over one arm. Her hair was that particular shade of white that's almost translucent, styled in curls so precise they looked sculpted. Nothing unusual. Late-night customers were often elderly insomniacs, people whose bodies had forgotten how to sleep properly, wandering into pharmacies at odd hours for whatever small comfort they could find. But as she moved past the seasonal display, Halloween decorations, plastic skeletons, and bags of fun-size candy bars. I noticed something odd about her rhythm. Each step was identical to the last. Not just similar, identical. The exact same stride length, the exact same pivot of her hip, mechanical in its precision. She went directly to aisle 2, first aid supplies, band-aids, antibiotic ointment, medical tape. I heard the sound of items being removed from shelves, the soft click of plastic bottles being placed in a basket. The store's background music, a loop of instrumental soft rock that had been playing Africa by Toto when she walked in, seemed to lower in volume, though I knew that was impossible. The volume was controlled by corporate, piped in through speakers we couldn't adjust. 3 minutes later, she emerged from the aisle and approached my register. Her basket contained 13 bottles of saline solution, all identical, all the exact same brand, size, and concentration. "Good evening," I said, starting to scan the first bottle. Beep, $4.79. She didn't respond. I scanned the second bottle. Beep, $4.79. "Did you find everything okay?" I tried, keeping my voice friendly. Nothing. She stared at a point approximately 3 inches to the left of my face. Beep, beep, beep. By the 7th bottle, my customer service smile had become something I was holding on to out of sheer stubbornness. The woman hadn't blinked once. Not once. I was sure of it now, because I'd been watching between scans, and her eyes, pale blue, watery with age, remained fixed and open. Beep, beep. 13 bottles of saline solution. $62.27. "That'll be $62.27, I said. She reached into her tote bag. Not a purse, I noticed, but one of those reusable shopping bags you get from grocery stores, and pulled out exact change. 3 $20 bills, 2 $1 bills, a quarter, and 2 pennies. She placed them on the counter in a neat stack, not in my outstretched hand. I processed the payment, and the receipt printer whirred to life, spitting out the long thermal paper strip. "Would you like your receipt?" I asked, holding it out. The woman took her bag of identical saline bottles, turned with that same mechanical precision, and walked toward the automatic doors. "Ma'am, your receipt?" She didn't pause, didn't turn. The doors hissed open, and she disappeared into the night, her silhouette briefly visible under the parking lot light before she moved beyond its reach. I stood there, holding the receipt, listening to the fluorescent lights buzz overhead. The clock on the register display read 12:47 a.m. I had 7 hours and 13 minutes left in my shift. The receipt was still in my hand. I stared at it for a long moment, the thermal paper already starting to curl at the edges, the way they always do. 13 items, all identical SKU numbers, marching down in a neat column. 62.27. Transaction completed at 12:47:23 a.m. Everything perfectly normal, except for the customer who'd bought them without speaking, without blinking, without taking her receipt. I crumpled it and tossed it in the small trash bin under the counter. People are weird, I told myself, especially at night, especially the elderly ones with insomnia and too much time to develop strange habits. It was a reasonable explanation. I'd worked retail before, a summer at Target during college, and before that, a brief stint at a movie theater where I'd seen humanity at its absolute worst over the correct amount of butter on popcorn. You learned quickly that people were just odd sometimes, particular, set in bizarre routines that made sense only to them. The saline solution woman was just another eccentric, nothing more. I tried to believe that. The store settled back into its usual midnight quiet. The HVAC system kicked on with a mechanical groan, pumping recycled air through vents that probably hadn't been cleaned in years. Somewhere in the back, the refrigeration units for the cold medicine section hummed their endless song. The instrumental music loop had moved on from Toto to what I think was a Muzak version of Don't Stop Believin' that sucked every ounce of soul from the original. I should have been stocking shelves. That's what Dennis had told me. 12 to 4, that was stocking time. But I found myself pulling the protocol card from my vest pocket again, studying it under the harsh register lights. The lamination had that tacky feel to it, slightly adhesive, like it had been handled by many sweaty hands before mine. I wondered how long this card had been in circulation, how many night shift workers had carried it, read these rules, dismissed them as a joke. 8 rules total, each one more bizarre than the last. Hospital gowns and eye contact, aisle numbers that didn't match, a pharmacist who didn't exist, cleaning crews and colored bins and staying behind the counter after 4 a.m. like the store itself became dangerous when the clock hit certain hours. It read like the setup to some internet creepypasta, the kind of thing bored teenagers write to scare each other on forums. Corporate bureaucracy meets supernatural rulebook. I'd laughed when I first read it, assuming it was Dennis's weird idea of a joke, some kind of hazing ritual for the new girl. Except Dennis hadn't been laughing when he gave it to me, and that look in his eyes. I flipped the card over. The back was blank except for a small note in the bottom corner, handwritten in blue ink that had faded to near illegibility. For questions, see Dennis. Yeah, thanks, Dennis, I muttered to the empty store. Super helpful, buddy. The delivery Dennis had mentioned, the one that came at 11:30, sat on a pallet near the stockroom entrance, still wrapped in plastic. I should probably deal with that. Busy work was better than standing here analyzing what was clearly just corporate weirdness. I grabbed the box cutter from under the counter and headed toward the back. The store felt different when you moved through it at night. During the day, with customers browsing and Muzak playing and the constant movement of commerce, it felt like a space with a purpose. But now, empty and fluorescent lit, it felt more like a stage set, like everything was just slightly too clean, too organized, waiting for actors to come and pretend it was a real place where real things happened. I was halfway to the stockroom when the automatic doors hissed open again. I turned, box cutter still in, hand, and felt my customer service smile activate automatically. A man stood just inside the entrance. He wore a hospital gown, the thin cotton kind that ties in the back, printed with that universal pattern of tiny blue diamonds on white fabric. His feet were bare, pale against the dark tile of the entrance mat. He was maybe 60, with stubble on his gaunt face and hair that stuck up at odd angles like he'd just gotten out of bed, or out of a hospital bed. My smile froze. The first rule on the card flashed through my mind with the clarity of neon. I looked away instinctively, focusing instead on his feet, his hospital gown, the IV bruise visible on his left arm, anywhere but his eyes. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, keeping my voice level, professional, trying to ignore the way my heart had suddenly begun hammering against my ribs. The man didn't answer immediately. I heard him take a step forward, the soft pad of bare feet on linoleum. Another step. I kept my eyes down, fixed on a scuff mark on the floor near aisle 3. My customer service training was screaming at me to look at him, to make that basic human connection. But the card in my pocket suddenly felt heavy as lead. "Where?" His voice was rough, underused, like someone who hadn't spoken in days. "Where is the pharmacy?" "The pharmacy counter is at the back of the store, but it's closed for the night," I said, still not looking up. "The automated kiosk is available for prescription pickup if you have your confirmation number." Another step. Closer now. I could smell him. That distinctive hospital smell of antiseptic and illness, of bodies not quite clean, of fear sweat dried on skin. "I need to speak to the pharmacist." "There's no pharmacist on staff overnight, sir. The kiosk can..." "I need to speak to the pharmacist." His voice hadn't changed in volume or inflection. The exact same sentence, delivered in the exact same tone, like a recording playing back. My hands were shaking. I gripped the box cutter tighter, the orange safety guard digging into my palm. This was insane. I was having a conversation with a man while deliberately avoiding his eyes like some kind of superstitious ritual, all because of a laminated card that was probably just Dennis's idea of a prank. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I made a mistake. I don't know why I did it. Instinct, maybe. That fundamental human drive to look at what you're talking to make that basic connection that we're all trained to do from childhood. Or maybe just the sheer weirdness of the situation, the need to confirm that this was real, that I wasn't having some kind of sleep-deprived hallucination. I looked up. I met his eyes. They were completely black. Not the iris, the entire eye. Black sclera, black iris, black pupil, like someone had taken an ink bottle and filled the sockets. And in that blackness, something moved, squirmed, like there were things living in there, writhing just beneath the surface. The man stopped, mid-step. His mouth opened, wider than it should have been able to, jaw unhinging like a snake's. A sound came out. Not a scream, not words, but something between the two. A grinding, static-filled noise that made my teeth ache and my vision blur at the edges. It was the sound of a radio stuck between stations, mixed with the crunch of bones breaking, mixed with something organic and wet that I had no reference point for. Then he began to move backward, not walking backward, not turning around, but moving in reverse. Every motion he'd made since entering the store, playing backward like someone had hit rewind on a video. His foot lifted and placed itself behind him in the exact spot where it had been a second before. His arm swung back to where it had hung at his side. His head tilted to the angle it had been at. Step by step, he walked backward toward the automatic doors. The movement was perfectly smooth, perfectly precise, like watching CGI rendered in real life. Each motion the exact inverse of what he'd done coming in. I watched, frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. My brain kept trying to rationalize it. Some kind of neurological episode. Maybe I was having a stroke. Maybe the fluorescent lights had finally triggered a seizure. But my eyes kept showing me the same impossible thing. The man continued his reverse journey, that grinding static sound fading as he went. His mouth closed, jaw resetting with an audible click. His foot touched down on the entrance mat. The doors sensed him, somehow, even though he was moving backward, and slid open. He walked backward through them, out into the parking lot, his pale, bare feet disappearing into the darkness beyond the sodium lights. The doors slid shut. The store was silent again, except for the HVAC and the buzzing fluorescent lights and my own ragged breathing. I stood there, box cutter in hand, staring at the empty entrance. My legs felt like water. My heart was doing something complicated and painful in my chest that probably wasn't healthy. The clock above the pharmacy counter read 1:28 a.m. Slowly, like I was moving through honey, I walked back to the register, set down the box cutter with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking, pulled the protocol card from my pocket. The lamination caught the light, and I noticed something I hadn't before. Along the edges, where the plastic seal met paper, there were tiny brown stains. Old blood, maybe, or rust. Something organic that had dried there years ago. I read the first instruction again, the words seeming to pulse with new significance. "Okay," I whispered to the empty store. "Okay, not a joke. Definitely not a joke." The muzak had moved on to an instrumental version of Every Breath You Take that was probably meant to be soothing, but now just sounded ominous. Every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. I pulled out my phone with some vague idea of calling. Someone. Anyone. Dennis, maybe, demanding to know what the hell was going on, or 911, though I had no idea what I'd even report. The screen showed one bar, then none, then flickered back to one bar before settling on no service. That was wrong. I'd had full bars earlier. I'd checked Instagram during a slow moment around 11:30, scrolled through photos of friends at bars and restaurants, living their normal Friday night lives. I tried calling anyway. The phone went through the motions, dialing animation, the little circle spinning, but produced no sound. Not even that dead air silence you get when a call doesn't connect. Just nothing. The landline behind the counter, an old corded phone that looked like it had been installed in the 1990s, sat in its cradle. I picked it up and listened. Dial tone. Normal, steady, exactly as it should be. I started to dial 911, then stopped with my finger hovering over the second one, and tell them what? That a man in a hospital gown with black eyes had walked backward out of the store after I'd broken some kind of supernatural rule that I'd found on a laminated card, that I was pretty sure reality was breaking down around me, but I had no proof except my own mounting terror. They'd think I was high, or having a mental breakdown, or pranking them. And even if they did send someone, what would they find? An empty pharmacy with a shaking cashier and no evidence that anything had happened. I set the phone back in its cradle. The protocol card sat on the counter where I'd placed it, the fluorescent lights making the lamination gleam. I studied the list again, but this time with a different mindset, not reading them as jokes or corporate nonsense, but as actual instructions, survival procedures. Whatever was happening here, whatever MediQuick pharmacy became after midnight, there were rules. The man in the hospital gown proved that. I'd broken one, consequences had happened, but I'd survived. He was gone. The store was stable again. Follow the rules, survive the shift. It was that simple. It had to be that simple. The automatic doors hissed open again, and I flinched so hard I nearly knocked over the receipt paper roll. A teenager shuffled in, headphones on, eyes on his phone, completely normal. Ripped jeans, a hoodie with some band logo I didn't recognize. He made a beeline for the energy drinks in the refrigerated section at the back, grabbed 2 Red Bulls and a bag of beef jerky, came to the counter, paid with a crumpled $10 bill, took his receipt without a word, and left. The whole interaction took 90 seconds, perfectly, completely normal. I exhaled slowly, forcing my heart rate to settle. Normal customers still existed. Normal transactions still happened. The store wasn't always wrong, just sometimes, at certain times, under certain conditions. I checked the clock, 1:43 a.m., 5 hours and 17 minutes left in my shift. The delivery pallet still sat by the stockroom, and staying busy seemed infinitely better than standing behind the register, waiting for whatever came through those doors next. I picked up the box cutter again, tucked the protocol card securely in my vest pocket, and headed for the back. The plastic wrap on the pallet squealed as I cut through it, a sound that seemed too loud in the quiet store. Inside were the usual supplies: toilet paper, paper towels, cases of bottled water, mundane, everyday items that people needed. Proof that this was still a real place that served a real purpose, not just some nightmare dimension wearing a pharmacy's skin. I started loading items onto a cart, falling into the rhythm of retail work. Scan the barcode, check the shelf location, stock appropriately. Mindless, repetitive, soothing in its familiarity. By the time I'd finished the first cart, my hands had almost stopped shaking. By the second cart, I'd almost convinced myself that I could get through this. Then I heard something from the back of the store, near the pharmacy counter, a sound like pills rattling in a bottle. Steady, rhythmic, deliberate. I froze. a 12-pack of paper towels in my hands. The pharmacy counter was supposed to be empty, automated, no staff after 11 p.m. The rattling continued. Shake, shake, shake. Pause. Shake, shake, shake. I checked the time on my phone. 1:58 a.m. Still an hour before 3 a.m. Whatever the third instruction on the card meant, it didn't apply yet. I could still check, still investigate, or you could stay right here, a voice in my head suggested. Stock shelves, mind your own business, survive until morning. But I've never been good at leaving mysteries alone. I set down the paper towels and walked toward the pharmacy counter, my footsteps echoing too loud in the empty store. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere an air freshener dispenser released a puff of artificial lavender scent that did nothing to mask the underlying smell of the place. Old linoleum and cardboard, and that particular pharmacy smell of pills and plastic bottles. The pharmacy section sat at the back, raised up 3 steps behind a long counter. Security glass separated it from the customer area, with a small window for passing prescriptions back and forth. Through that window, I could see the work area, shelves of medications, the counting tray, the computer terminal with its dark screen. And standing with his back to me, in a white pharmacist's coat, was a man. He was counting pills. I could see his hands moving, precise and methodical, placing small white tablets on the counting tray. The rattling sound came from the pill bottle he held, shaking out exact amounts with practiced ease. "Hello?" I called out, my voice smaller than I intended. The man didn't turn, didn't pause, just kept counting, his movements mechanical and precise. "Sir, the pharmacy is closed. You're not supposed to be..." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, confused. I still had no service, and saw a calendar reminder flash across the screen. Night shift, 3D and a keys. AM approaching, except I hadn't set any reminder, and it was only 1:59 a.m. As I watched, the numbers on my phone display flickered. 1:59 a.m., then 2:47 a.m., then 2:13 a.m., then 3:00 a.m. The time was jumping, unstable, like the phone couldn't decide what time it actually was. I looked up at the clock on the wall. It showed 2:01 a.m. ticking forward normally. When I looked back at the pharmacy counter, the man in the white coat had turned around. I couldn't see his face, not because he was too far away or the lighting was poor, but because where his face should have been, there was just shadow, deep, absolute darkness that seemed to absorb the fluorescent light rather than reflect it. We stood there, separated by the security glass, staring at each other. Or he was staring. I couldn't see eyes, couldn't see any features, just that void where a face should be. The third rule came back to me with crystalline clarity. Do not acknowledge the pharmacist after 3 a.m. My phone still showed 3:00 a.m. The numbers frozen now. The wall clock showed 2:02 a.m. The figure behind the glass tilted its head, an almost curious gesture, waiting to see what I would do. I backed away slowly, maintaining eye contact with the void, my customer service smile frozen on my face like a death mask. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. "Sorry," I managed. Thought I heard something. My mistake. The figure didn't move. I backed all the way to the main aisle, then turned and walked. Not ran. Walking would look normal. Running would acknowledge that something was wrong. Back toward the front register. Behind me, I heard the rattling resume. Shake, shake, shake. Pills being counted in the empty pharmacy. I made it back to the counter and checked the time. 2:04 a.m. My phone had corrected itself, showing the same time now. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the protocol card lying next to the register. 8 rules, 8 instructions for surviving something that shouldn't exist, and I had 5 hours and 56 minutes left to follow them. I spent the next hour doing everything I could to avoid looking toward the back of the store, stock the shelves, organize the impulse buy display near the register, travel-sized hand sanitizers and chapsticks that had been picked through and rearranged by countless customers into a chaotic mess, wipe down the counter with disinfectant that smelled like artificial lemons and broken promises, count the register drawer twice, even though I wasn't supposed to do that until the end of shift. Anything to keep busy, anything to avoid thinking about the figure in the white coat, standing in a pharmacy that was supposed to be empty, counting pills in the darkness. The rattling had stopped around 2:30 a.m. I'd noticed its absence more than I'd noticed the sound itself, the way you notice when a refrigerator suddenly stops humming and you realize it's been humming the whole time. The silence felt heavier somehow, more present than the noise had been. I didn't go check. I didn't even look in that direction. At 3:14 a.m., the automatic doors opened and a woman walked in. She was the kind of put together that suggested money and careful maintenance. Tailored blazer over a silk blouse despite the hour, hair in a perfect chignon, heels that clicked against the linoleum with authority. Maybe 45, though good cosmetic work made it hard to tell. She carried a designer handbag, the kind with interlocking C's that cost more than my monthly rent. "Good evening," I said, my customer service voice activating on autopilot. "Can I help you find anything?" The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, actually. I'm looking for aisle 7. My hand, which had been reaching for a bottle of hand sanitizer to add to the display, froze mid-motion. The second rule, the one that made no sense because all the aisles were clearly numbered and there was no reason to redirect anyone from aisle 7 to aisle 4. "Aisle 4, I said, the words coming out before I'd consciously decided to say them. "You'll want aisle 4, vitamins and supplements section." The woman's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "Oh, I think you misunderstood. I'm looking for aisle 7, not 4. "Right, yes," I said, keeping my voice steady, channeling every customer service training video I'd ever suffered through. "Aisle 4 has what you're looking for. Vitamins and supplements, right in the middle of the store." We stared at each other. Her eyes were pale blue, almost colorless in the fluorescent light, and they didn't blink. Another non-blinker. What was it with these people and blinking? "Thank you so much," she finally said, her tone suggesting she was thanking me for something else entirely. "You've been very helpful." She turned and walked toward the middle of the store, her heels clicking a steady rhythm. I watched her progress in the large convex security mirror mounted in the corner, the kind that lets you see multiple aisles at once, supposedly to prevent shoplifting, but mostly just to give overnight staff something to look at. The woman in the mirror walked toward aisle 4, just like I'd directed, but her reflection, her actual reflection in the mirror, walked in a different direction entirely. I blinked, certain I was seeing it wrong, but no, there it was, the woman's physical body turning down aisle 4, passing under the yellowing plastic sign that read, "Vitamins and Supplements." Meanwhile, her reflection in the security mirror veered right, toward the back corner of the store, where there was supposed to be just a wall with emergency exit signage. I should have stayed at the register, should have followed the rules, done my job, pretended I hadn't seen anything wrong. Instead, I grabbed my box cutter, not sure what I thought I'd do with it, but it made me feel marginally less helpless, and moved toward aisle 4. The woman was there, browsing the vitamin selection. Her back was to me, and she was humming something under her breath. Not a song I recognized, just a tuneless melody that made my skin crawl. "Finding everything okay?" I asked. "Yes, wonderful selection," she replied, without turning around. I glanced at the security mirror. Her reflection was nowhere near aisle 4. It had turned a corner that shouldn't exist and disappeared from view. "Great," I said, Just let me know if you need anything." I backed away, then turned and walked quickly toward the rear corner of the store where I'd seen the reflection go. Past aisle 17, household goods and cleaning supplies. Past the emergency exit with its bright red sign. Past the water fountain that hadn't worked since before I started. The wall was just a wall, painted beige, scuffed in places, with a faded corporate poster about workplace safety partially peeling off. Nothing unusual, no door, no opening, no mysterious seventh aisle. But when I looked at the security mirror from this angle, I could see it, there, in the reflection, barely visible, like a photograph that was starting to fade. An aisle. The plastic sign hanging from the ceiling read simply 7 in the same font and style as all the others. The shelves were stocked with products, though I couldn't make out what they were from this distance. And walking down that aisle, in the reflection only, was the well-dressed woman. I turned to look at the actual corner. Just a wall, solid and real and completely normal. Back to the mirror. The aisle was there, ghostly and flickering like a bad television signal. But there. The woman's reflection picked up a bottle from one of the shelves, examined it, put it back. I took a step forward, reaching out to touch the wall where the aisle should be. My fingers met solid plaster. I pressed harder, trying to find some seam, some indication that there was more there than what my eyes told me. Nothing. Just a normal wall in a normal pharmacy. In the mirror, the woman's reflection had stopped. She was looking directly at me, or at my reflection, with that same too wide smile. Then she turned and walked deeper into aisle 7, disappearing behind shelves that shouldn't exist. I spun around, half expecting to see her standing right behind me, but there was no one. Just empty aisles and fluorescent lights and the eternal hum of the HVAC system. I walked quickly back to aisle 4, box cutter gripped tight enough that my knuckles had gone white. The woman was gone. The aisle was empty, vitamins and supplements sitting untouched on their shelves. I checked every aisle, 1 through 17, walking down each one, looking for any sign of the well-dressed woman with her designer bag and her colorless eyes. Nothing. The store was empty except for me. When I made it back to the register, there was a receipt sitting on the counter. I know I hadn't printed one. I'd been away from the register for the past 10 minutes, but there it was. The thermal paper still warm to the touch. One item. SKU number I didn't recognize. $0. Transaction. Time, 3:29 a.m. No item description. Just a string of numbers that might have been a product code or might have been something else entirely. At the bottom, where the register usually printed "Thank you for shopping at MediQuick," there was different text. "See you soon." I crumpled the receipt and threw it in the trash, then immediately regretted it and fished it back out. Evidence. Proof that something had happened, even if I didn't understand what. I smoothed it flat and tucked it into my pocket next to the protocol card. The clock showed 3:34 a.m., 3.5 hours left. I could make it. I'd followed the rules, directed her to aisle 4 like I was supposed to, didn't try to stop her, didn't ask questions. And whatever aisle 7 actually was, wherever it existed, it wasn't my problem. I pulled out my phone to check the time again, needing that confirmation of reality, of normal time passing normally. A text message notification sat on my screen, from an unknown number. "You're doing great," it read. "Just remember Rule 8. I stared at the message, hadn't sent anything, hadn't given my number to anyone connected to this place except for the official employee records. I tried to reply, but the message interface showed "Recipient not available." Rule 8. I pulled out the protocol card, even though I'd already memorized it. After 4 a.m., stay behind the counter unless restocking. Less than 30 minutes until 4 a.m. The automatic doors hissed open. I looked up, customer service smile ready. and saw 3 people in yellow janitorial uniforms push through the entrance, carrying mops and buckets and industrial cleaning equipment. The cleaning crew. Rule 6 surfaced in my memory. The cleaning crew does not require assistance. They moved in perfect synchronization, their steps aligned like soldiers in formation. They didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my presence at all, just began mopping the floors in geometric patterns, starting at the entrance and working their way deeper into the store. I watched them in the security mirror because looking directly at them felt wrong somehow. Felt like it might violate Rule 6, even though the rule didn't specifically say not to look. In the mirror, their mop trails left dark streaks on the floor. Not clean water, but something darker. Something that looked disturbingly like old blood. I looked at the actual floor. The trails were clear water, exactly as they should be. Back to the mirror. Dark streaks, spreading across the linoleum in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Almost like symbols. "Oh fuck," I whispered to the empty register area. The clock ticked over to 3:59 a.m., 1 minute until Rule 8 went into effect. The cleaning crew worked their way down aisle 1, their movements perfectly synchronized, their mops leaving trails that were simultaneously clean water and something much, much worse. At exactly 4 o'clock a.m., all 3 of them stopped. They turned to face my direction in unison, and even from this distance, even though I couldn't see their faces clearly, I knew something was wrong with them. I stepped behind the counter, remembering Rule 8 just in time. After 4 a.m., stay behind the counter unless restocking. The cleaning crew stood motionless for a long moment, their faces pointed toward me. Then they resumed their work, moving deeper into the store, leaving trails of ambiguous liquid in their wake. I stayed behind the counter, hands gripping the edge, and watched the clock count down the remaining hours of my shift. The cleaning crew worked in silence, not the comfortable silence of people focused on their task, but the absolute absence of sound that shouldn't be possible when 3 people are pushing mops and buckets across linoleum. No splash of water, no squeak of wheels, no shuffle of feet, just the visual representation of cleaning without any of the audio to accompany it. They move through the store in those same geometric patterns, spirals and figure eights and shapes I couldn't quite identify, but that felt intentional, mathematical, like they were drawing something with their mops, inscribing symbols on the floor in water that looked clean to my eyes, but wrong in every mirror and reflective surface. I stayed behind the counter, hands gripped the edge until my fingers ached, eyes fixed on the clock. 4:17 a.m., 3 hours and 43 minutes to go. The crew had made it to aisle 9, oral care, toothpaste, and mouthwash, when one of them paused. The figure on the left, slightly taller than the other 2, stopped mid-stroke with the mop and turned its head, not toward me, toward the back of the store, toward the pharmacy counter. The other 2 stopped as well, their synchronization still perfect. All 3 stood motionless, facing the raised pharmacy section with its dark windows and security glass. Then they resumed mopping, but now their pattern had changed. Instead of moving deeper into the store, they were working their way around the perimeter, creating a wide circle that seemed to carefully avoid the pharmacy area entirely, like there was an invisible boundary they wouldn't cross, or couldn't cross. I checked the security mirror. In the reflection, the trails their mops left behind formed words. Not English, not any language I recognized. Symbols and characters that hurt to look at, that made my eyes water and my vision blur at the edges. "Don't look," I whispered to myself. "Don't watch them work." I forced my gaze away from the mirror, down to the counter, to my hands still gripping the formica like it was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. My phone sat next to the register, dark and silent. The time display read 4:23 a.m. and I watched the numbers change to 4:24 a.m., finding comfort in that steady progression. Normal time, linear time, time that moved in one direction and meant something. Behind me, I heard something that might have been footsteps, soft, measured, coming from the pharmacy area. I didn't turn around. The protocol card pressed against my ribs through my vest pocket, a small rectangle of certainty. Rule 3. Do not acknowledge the pharmacist after 3 a.m. It was well after 3 a.m. now. Whatever was back there, whoever was back there, I needed to pretend they didn't exist. The footsteps, if that's what they were, continued. Closer now. I could feel a presence behind me, could sense someone or something standing just out of my peripheral vision. My customer service training screamed at me to turn, to greet them, to ask if they needed help. Every social instinct I had demanded I acknowledge this person, this entity, this whatever it was. I stared at my phone. 4:26 a.m. "Excuse me," said a voice behind me. It was a man's voice, calm, professional, with the slight distance of someone who'd worked customer service too long and had learned to smooth all personality from their tone. The voice of a pharmacist explaining drug interactions or insurance copays. Completely, utterly normal, which made it worse somehow. I didn't turn, didn't respond, just kept staring at my phone like it was the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen. "Excuse me," the voice repeated, exactly the same inflection, exactly the same tone. "I need to verify a prescription." My hands tightened on the counter edge. Somewhere, distantly, I registered pain as my fingernails dug into my palms. The cleaning crew had moved to aisle 13, digestive health, still carefully maintaining their perimeter around the pharmacy. "Miss?" The voice again. Still polite, still professional, still wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The fluorescent lights above the pharmacy counter began to strobe. I could see it in the reflection of my phone screen. Rapid flashing, on, off, like a faulty connection or a bulb about to die. The whole back section of the store flickering in and out of illumination. "I really need your assistance," the voice said. And now there was something underneath the professional tone. Something patient and hungry and very, very old. I pulled out my earbuds. I'd forgotten I even had them in my pocket, and jammed them in my ears. Found a podcast on my phone, some true crime thing about a bank robbery in the 1970s, and turned the volume up until the host's cheerful narration drowned out everything else. The presence behind me remained. I could feel it there, waiting, patient as stone. 4:31 a.m. The podcast host was explaining the layout of the bank, the number of tellers on duty, the placement of security cameras. I focused on every word, let the mundane details of a 40-year-old crime fill my head until there was no room for anything else. In my peripheral vision, I saw the pharmacy lights stabilize. The strobing stopped. The fluorescents settled back into their normal buzz, that steady 60 hertz flicker that was always there if you paid attention. I kept the earbuds in, kept listening to the podcast, watched the clock tick forward with agonizing slowness. 4:47 a.m., 47. The cleaning crew had finished their circuit. They moved toward the entrance in that same synchronized formation, pushing their mops and buckets, leaving trails that the mirrors said were blood, but my eyes insisted were water. The automatic doors opened. They filed out into the pre-dawn darkness. The doors closed behind them. Silence returned. Real silence this time, with actual sounds underneath. The HVAC, the refrigeration units, the buzz of lights, the distant hum of the highway half a mile away. I pulled out one earbud, listened. Nothing. No footsteps. No voice asking for assistance. No presence hovering just beyond my vision. I turned around slowly. The pharmacy counter sat empty and dark. The security glass reflected the overhead lights back at me in normal, boring ways. No shadows that shouldn't be there. No figures in white coats. No one at all. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. 4:52 a.m., 2 hours and 8 minutes left. The worst was over. It had to be. I'd followed the rules, survived the cleaning crew, ignored the pharmacist. My phone buzzed. Another text from that unknown number. "You're learning, but the morning is when they get desperate." I stared at the message, then looked around the empty store. The aisles stretched out before me, ordinary and mundane in the fluorescent light. Product labels faced forward, price tags aligned, everything in its designated place, organized by category and brand and corporate planogram. A normal pharmacy, a normal night shift. Nothing wrong at all, except for aisle 7, which existed only in mirrors, except for the customers who moved backward and had eyes full of darkness, except for the pharmacist who counted pills in an empty room after 3 a.m., except for all of it. I tucked my phone away and checked the protocol card one more time, just to be sure. 8 rules. I'd followed them so far, just 2 more hours of following them, and then Carla would arrive for the day shift, and I could clock out and go home and decide whether I was coming back tomorrow night. The automatic doors hissed open. I looked up, customer service smile, automatic, and saw something that made my blood freeze. A young girl stood in the entrance, maybe 8 years old, wearing a white nightgown that hung to her ankles. Her feet were bare, pale against the dark entrance mat. Her hair hung in tangles around her face. She clutched a piece of paper in one small hand, crumpled notebook paper, the kind with the 3 holes punched in the side. She looked directly at me with eyes that were too old, too knowing, for her child's face. "Hi," she said, her voice small and sweet. "I need help finding something." Every instinct I had screamed that this was wrong. Children didn't wander into pharmacies at 5 a.m. in their nightgowns. Parents didn't exist somewhere off camera. This wasn't a normal customer with a normal request. But she wasn't wearing a hospital gown, wasn't asking for aisle 7, wasn't any of the specific situations the protocol card warned about, which meant I had to treat her like a regular customer. "Of course, sweetie," I heard myself say, the customer service autopilot taking over. "What are you looking for?" The girl walked toward me, her bare feet making soft padding sounds on the linoleum. She held out the crumpled paper. "It's on my list," she said. "Mommy made me a list." I took the paper, smoothing it out on the counter. Written in crayon, in a child's unsteady handwriting, were 3 words: medicine for sleeping below. That, in adult handwriting, precise and neat, the kind that doesn't wake up. I looked from the paper to the girl, my mouth suddenly dry. "Where's your mom, honey?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The girl smiled. It was not a child's smile. "She's sleeping," she said. "I need the medicine so I can sleep too, forever and ever." The clock read 5:03 a.m., and somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized I'd seen this girl before. I stared at the child, at her too old smile and bare feet, and the note requesting medicine for permanent sleep, and felt reality tilt slightly sideways. "Honey, I think you should go home," I said, keeping my voice gentle, despite the ice spreading through my chest. "Is there someone I can call? Your mom, or—" "You helped me before," the girl interrupted, her head tilting at an angle that was just slightly wrong, slightly too far. "Don't you remember? I've never seen you before tonight." "Yes, you have." She pointed at the security camera mounted in the corner above the register. "You can check." I didn't want to check. Every fiber of my being screamed not to engage with this, not to follow this thread wherever it led. But my hand was already reaching for the small monitor under the counter, the one that cycled through different camera feeds that Dennis had showed me during training for security purposes. I pulled up the archive footage. The system kept rolling recordings, 72 hours worth, before it started overwriting. I scrolled backward through tonight's shift. The cleaning crew leaving, the woman who'd asked for aisle 7, the man in the hospital gown walking backward out the door. Further back, yesterday's night shift. There I was on the grainy footage, standing behind this same register, in this same burgundy vest. And there was the girl, approaching the counter, me handing her something, a small white bag, her smiling that same wrong smile and walking out. I scrolled back further. The night before that, same scene. Me and the girl, same transaction, same small white bag. Further still, 5 nights ago, 7 nights ago, every single night shift in the archive. Me and this girl, this same exact interaction, playing out like a script we'd rehearsed 100 times. But I'd only worked here 9 days, and I'd only worked 2 overnight shifts, my first one with Dennis, and tonight, except the footage said otherwise. The footage showed me here, night after night, helping this barefoot girl in her nightgown. "You see," the girl said sweetly, "you always help me." I looked up from the monitor. She was closer now, though I hadn't seen her move. Right up against the counter, her small hands flat on the formica. Her fingernails were dirty, caked with something dark underneath. "What did I give you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The medicine that helps people sleep forever." She said it like she was reciting a line from a book. "You keep it in the back, in the special place." "There is no special place. This is a regular pharmacy. We don't have aisle 7, she said. "That's where you get it." My blood turned to ice water. "I don't go to aisle 7, I said firmly. "Nobody goes to aisle 7. It doesn't, but you do go there." The girl's smile widened, showing too many teeth that were just slightly too sharp. "After I leave, you always go there. You don't remember because you're not supposed to remember. None of them remember." "None of who?" She gestured around the empty store. "All the night workers. They help me, night after night, and then they forget, until it's their turn." "My turn for what?" The girl didn't answer. She just stared at me with those ancient eyes in her child's face, waiting. The automatic doors hissed open. I looked up reflexively, expecting, hoping for, a normal customer. Someone who would break whatever was happening here, who would restore some sense of reality. A man walked in, late 30s, wearing a business suit despite the hour. He carried a paper shopping bag, the kind with handles, from some clothing store. He walked directly to my register with the purposeful stride of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "I need to return these," he said, setting the bag on the counter. I glanced at the girl. She'd stepped back, fading slightly into the fluorescent haze, but she was still there, still watching. "Sure," I said to the man, grateful for something normal to do, even if nothing about this situation felt normal. "Do you have your receipt?" He pulled out a receipt and handed it to me. I looked at it. The paper was yellowed with age, the ink faded, but still legible. MediQuick Pharmacy, 3 items. Total, $47.83. Date, December 3rd, 2025. I checked my phone, November 16th, 2025. The receipt was dated almost 3 weeks in the future. "Sir, this receipt is—" "I know what it says," he interrupted. His voice was flat, exhausted. "Just process the return." My hands shook as I took the bag and looked inside. 3 bottles of prescription medication. The labels had his name, Richard Kellerman, and dosage instructions, all dated for pickup on December 3rd, 2025. "I'm sorry, but I can't return medication," I said, trying to sound professional, while my brain screamed that none of this made sense. "Especially prescription medication. There are regulations." "Scan them," he said. and there was something desperate in his tone now. "Please, just scan them and process. The return. I won't need them anymore. Why won't you?" I stopped. His hands were resting on the counter, and they were ice cold. Not just cold like someone who'd been outside, cold like they'd been in a freezer, cold like dead things are cold. The veins visible under his skin looked gray rather than blue. Against every instinct, I scanned the first bottle. The register beeped, accepted it, showed a return amount of $15.94. I scanned the second, the third. The register processed all of them without error, dispensing cash from the drawer for products that hadn't been sold yet, that wouldn't be sold for weeks. "Thank you," Richard Kellerman said, taking the cash with his frozen hands. "You've been very kind." He turned and walked toward the exit. Halfway there, he paused and looked back at me. "You should quit," he said quietly, "before it's too late." Then he was gone, the automatic doors hissing shut behind him. I stood there, hands still shaking, staring at the register. The return had processed, the receipt printed. Everything functioned exactly as it was supposed to, except for the minor detail that I just returned medication from the future to a man whose hands felt like corpse flesh. I pulled up the customer database on the register terminal, something Dennis had showed me for checking prescription histories. Typed in Richard Kellerman, one profile loaded. Active prescriptions for blood pressure medication, cholesterol management, anxiety. Status: deceased. Date of death, November 16th, 2025. Today. He died today. "You're starting to understand," the girl said. I'd almost forgotten she was there. She stood at the end of the counter now, the fluorescent lights seeming to pass through her rather than illuminate her. "Understand what?" My voice came out hoarse. "The store doesn't want to help people. It wants to complete transactions. Whatever you sold, it has to come back. Whatever you promised, you have to deliver. The loop has to close." I didn't sell him anything. That was weeks from now. That's not... "Time doesn't work right here," the girl said simply. "Not after midnight. Effects come before causes. Returns come before purchases. You'll help me get my medicine. And then later, earlier, you'll have already helped me. It's already done. You just haven't done it yet." My head throbbed. The logic was circular, impossible, but it felt true in the way nightmares feel true. Senseless, but absolutely certain. The automatic doors opened again. An elderly woman shuffled in, moving with that careful gait of brittle bones. She carried a bag from our pharmacy, one of our branded plastic bags with the MediQuick logo. She approached the register and set the bag down. "Return," she said simply. I looked inside. Prescription bottles, all dated 6 months in the future, June 2026. "I don't think I'll make it that long," she said, matter-of-factly. "So I'm returning them now. Waste not, want not." I processed the return. The register accepted, it without question. The woman took her refund and left. Then another customer, a young man, mid-20s, returning bottles dated for next March. "Found a better pharmacy," he said, but his eyes were hollow, his skin waxy. The register accepted his return too, and another, and another. They came in steady succession, each one returning items from the future, each one colder than the last. Some gave reasons, moving away, found a better price, changed insurance. Some said nothing at all, but all of them had that same quality. Not quite alive, not quite present, existing in some temporal space that my mind couldn't properly process. The register accepted every return. Cash flowed out of the drawer in increasing amounts. By the 6th customer, I'd stopped looking at the dates, stopped questioning the logic, just scanned the bottles, processed the returns, wished them a good evening. The girl watched all of this with patient, ancient eyes. When the last of the returners left, a middle-aged man bringing back prescriptions dated for 2027, The store fell silent again. "Now do you understand?" the girl asked. I looked at the register display. The return total for the last 20 minutes, $847.36. All of it for products that hadn't been sold yet. All of it pulled from a drawer that should have run out of cash by now, but somehow kept producing more bills, more transactions, more impossible exchanges. "The store has to balance," the girl continued. "Everything that goes out has to come back. Time doesn't matter. Only the transaction matters." "And you?" I asked. "What are you returning?" Her smile turned sad. "I haven't bought it yet, but I will. You'll sell it to me. And then I'll sleep forever. And then I'll come back for a refund. That's how it works here. Everything circles back." The clock showed 5:47 a.m. 1 hour and 13 minutes until my shift ended. 1 hour and 13 minutes to figure out how to break a loop that, according to the security footage, I'd already been trapped in for weeks. "What happens if I don't help you?" I asked. "What happens if I refuse?" The girl's expression didn't change. "Then you become part of the store," she said simply. "Like all the others who tried to break the rules." "What others?" She pointed toward the back of the store, toward the pharmacy counter, toward the darkness behind the security glass. "The ones who count pills forever," she said. "The ones who clean floors that never get clean. The ones who keep working their shifts even after they forget they're dead." The fluorescent lights flickered. In the brief darkness, I saw them. Figures throughout the store, standing in aisles, behind the pharmacy counter, in the stockroom doorway. Dozens of them, all wearing Mediquick vests, all with my face. The lights steadied. The store was empty again. Just me and the girl. "You still have time to choose," she said. "Help me like you always do, or try to break the pattern and join them. Either way, the store gets what it wants." The automatic doors opened once more, but this time, nobody came in. Instead, through the glass, I could see the parking lot had changed. The sodium lights were gone. The gym next door was gone. There was only darkness now, vast and absolute, pressing against the windows like a living thing. And in that darkness, shapes moved. They were coming closer. I backed away from the windows, from the shapes moving in the impossible darkness outside. The parking lot was gone. The highway glow was gone. Even the streetlights that had been there moments ago vanished, replaced by a void so complete it seemed to swallow light rather than simply exist without it. The girl was gone too. I spun around, searching for her, but the store was empty again. Just me and the fluorescent buzz and the shapes pressing against the glass. My phone showed 5:52 a.m. 8 minutes. That couldn't be right. The returners had taken at least 20 minutes, maybe 30. I'd processed 6 transactions, maybe 7, each one taking several minutes. But the clock insisted. 5:52 a.m. I grabbed the protocol card from my pocket, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 8 rules. I'd followed most of them. Avoided eye contact with the hospital gown man. Directed the woman to aisle 4 instead of 7. Ignored the pharmacist after 3 a.m. Stayed behind the counter after 4 a.m. But now it was almost 6 a.m. and the rules didn't say anything about what happened at 6 a.m. or what to do when the world outside disappeared and your shift kept looping and security footage showed you'd been working the same night for weeks. Something tapped on the glass. I looked up. One of the shapes had pressed against the front window. It had a vaguely human outline, but the proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent at angles that didn't match any anatomy I understood. Where its face should have been, there was just more darkness, a void within a void. It tapped again, deliberately, like it was knocking. The automatic doors stayed closed. Whatever these things were, they couldn't trigger the sensors, or chose not to, or were waiting for something else. A sound behind me made me spin around. The three figures in yellow janitorial uniforms stood in aisle 12, even though I'd watched them leave hours ago. They'd materialized there without the doors opening, without any sound of entry, just suddenly present, as if they'd always been there, and I'd simply failed to notice. They held their mops and buckets, stood in that same perfect formation, perfectly synchronized. And now, in the fuller light of the store, I could see what I'd avoided seeing before through the security mirror. They had no faces, not darkness where faces should be, like the pharmacist, not black eyes or wrong proportions, just smooth, blank expanses of skin from hairline to chin, uninterrupted by any features. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just flesh-colored voids that should have been faces. One of them tilted its head, an inquisitive gesture made horrifying by the absence of any features to express inquiry. Then all three began to move, but not toward me, toward the windows, toward the shapes pressing against the glass from outside. Their mops hit the floor in perfect unison, and they began to clean. Same geometric patterns as before, same measured movements, but now the water trailing behind them wasn't water at all, not even in the pretense my eyes had been willing to accept earlier. It was black, thick and viscous, like ink mixed with oil, spreading across the linoleum in those same mathematical shapes, circles within circles, spirals that hurt to look at, symbols that seemed to writhe and reconfigure themselves when I wasn't looking directly at them. The shapes outside pressed harder against the glass. The windows creaked. One of them, the tapping one, drew something on the window with an appendage that might have been a finger, a symbol, the same symbol the cleaning crew was drawing on the floor. They were answering each other. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The sixth rule flashed through my mind. The cleaning crew does not require assistance. But it didn't say they were protecting me, didn't say they worked for the store or for me or for anything human. Just that they didn't need help with whatever they were doing. And what they were doing, I realized with mounting horror, was opening a door. The black substance they spread across the floor was pooling now, gathering in the center of the store like liquid mercury flowing toward a drain. The symbols they'd drawn pulsed with a light that wasn't light, a negative glow, darkness that was somehow brighter than the surrounding shadows. The windows cracked. Thin fracture lines spiderwebbed across the glass, spreading from where the shapes pressed hardest. I looked at the clock. 5:58 a.m. 2 minutes. 2 minutes until 6 a.m., and then Carla would arrive for day shift, and this would end. It had to end. Time worked in loops and circles here, but 7 a.m. had to mean something. The day shift had to be real, unless 7 a.m. never came, unless I'd been working towards 7 a.m. for weeks, months, and it always stopped here, at 5:58, at the moment when the cleaning crew opened their door and the shapes outside came in, and the night shift started over again with my memory wiped clean, ready to follow the same script I'd apparently been following forever. The pool of black substance in the center of the store began to ripple, not from any disturbance, but from underneath, like something was pushing up from below. The cleaning crew stepped back in unison, their work apparently complete. They stood at attention, faceless heads turned toward their creation. A hand emerged from the pool, pale, human-shaped, but too large, fingers too long. It pressed flat against the floor, and whatever was attached to it began to pull itself up through the black liquid. The windows shattered. Glass exploded inward in a crystalline spray, and the shapes outside poured through. They moved like smoke, like liquid, like something that existed in too many dimensions, and my brain could only process fragments of the whole. I caught impressions, limbs that bent wrong, eyes that weren't eyes, mouths that spiraled inward, rather than opened. They flowed into the store, spreading down the aisles, touching products with appendages that left frost patterns on the packaging. I ran, not toward the exit. The exit was gone, filled with those things. Not toward the back. The pharmacy counter was its own nightmare waiting to happen. I ran toward the only place that made any sense, the only constant in all of this. Aisle 4, the vitamins and supplements aisle, the place I'd been directing people away from aisle 7, the place that was supposed to be normal, mundane, safe. I ducked behind a shelf of protein powder and crouched down, making myself as small as possible. Through the gaps between products, I could see the store. The shapes moved through the aisles. They weren't searching, they were browsing, like customers, picking up items, examining them, sometimes taking them, sometimes putting them back, shopping in whatever horrific way they shopped. The thing pulling itself from the pool had emerged fully now. It stood 12 feet tall, impossibly thin, with skin that looked like it had been stretched over a frame 3 sizes too large. Its face was a collection of features that almost matched human proportions, but were slightly wrong in every detail. Eyes too far apart, mouth too wide, too many teeth, all of them perfectly white and perfectly square. It wore a white coat, a pharmacist's coat. Behind me, I heard breathing. I froze. Someone, something, was in the aisle with me. "You ran to aisle 4, a voice said. The girl's voice. "That's good. That's where you're supposed to go." I turned slowly. She sat cross-legged on the floor 3 feet away, her nightgown pooled around her. In the chaos, in the terror, she looked almost peaceful. "Aisle 4 is the safe space," she continued. "It's where people go when they're trying to find aisle 7. It's the in-between place. Not quite real. Not quite not real." "What are those things?" I managed. "Customers," she said simply. "The real customers. The ones who shop here between midnight and 6 a.m. The ones who need things the daytime store doesn't carry." "And the thing in the white coat?" "The pharmacist," she said. "The one you're not supposed to acknowledge after 3 a.m. He fills prescriptions for them. He gives them what they need." Through the shelf gaps, I watched the tall thing move behind the pharmacy counter. The shapes, the customers, began to line up, orderly and patient, waiting their turn. The thing in the white coat took their requests, moved among the shelves of medication, counted out pills with those 2 long fingers. A normal pharmacy transaction, completely mundane, except for every single detail. "They won't hurt you," the girl said. "Not if you stay quiet, not if you follow the rules. They just want to complete their transactions and leave." "And what do you want?" I asked. "Really?" She smiled that sad, ancient smile. "I want you to remember," she said. "Everyone who works here forgets. The loop erases it. But if you remember, really remember, you can break it." "How?" "Stop selling me the medicine," she said. "Every night you sell it to me. Then I take it. Then I die. Then I come back to return it. Then you sell it to me again, round and round, break the loop, refuse the sale. But I don't remember selling you anything. I don't remember any of this." "You will," she said. "When it's time, when the moment comes, you'll remember, and you'll have to choose." The clock, I could just see it from my position, showed 6:04 a.m. It had finally ticked past 6. Time was moving again, moving forward. The shapes at the pharmacy counter were finishing their transactions, collecting their prescriptions in small white bags, moving toward the exit. Except there was no exit, just darkness where the windows had been. They walked into that darkness anyway, and it accepted them, swallowed them, and they were gone. One by one, the customers disappeared into the void. The tall thing in the white coat processed the last prescription, handed over the last bag, and then turned and walked back into the pharmacy area, disappearing behind the security glass. The cleaning crew picked up their mops and buckets. They moved toward the center of the store, toward the pool of black substance. They stepped into it, sinking down, down, until the black liquid closed over their faceless heads, and they were gone. The pool evaporated, just water now, spreading thin across the floor until it dried to nothing. The windows reassembled themselves. Glass fragments flew backward through the air, fitting together like puzzle pieces, cracks sealing, until the windows were whole again. Through them, I could see the parking lot, the sodium lights, the gym next door, the highway glow in the distance. Normal. Everything normal. I stayed crouched behind the protein powder, too terrified to move. The girl stood up, brushing off her nightgown. "It's almost time," she said. "Almost 7 a.m. Carla will be here soon. You'll tell her everything was fine. You'll clock out and go home. You'll sleep through the day. And tonight, you'll come back, and we'll do it all again." "No," I said. "I'll quit. I'll never come back." She looked at me with those ancient eyes. That's what Dennis said. That's what all of them said. But the store doesn't let go easily. You'll find reasons to come back. The money's good. You need the job. Where else will you find overnight work that pays this well? The reasons will feel real. They'll feel like your choice. I'll fight it. "Maybe," she said. "Maybe you're strong enough, but probably not. The loop is patient. It's been turning for a long time." She walked toward the front of the store, toward the doors that now opened normally, triggered by her movement. She paused at the threshold. "See you tonight, Maya," she said. Then she was gone, walking into the normal morning, a barefoot girl in a nightgown that no one else would see, that no one else would question. The clock showed 6:47 a.m. The automatic doors opened again. Carla walked in, manager's keys jangling, coffee in hand. She looked tired, but normal, completely normal, the most beautifully normal thing I'd ever seen. "Hey Maya," she said, heading for the back office. "How was the night? Everything quiet?" I stood up on shaking legs, walked to the register, tried to remember how to form words. "Yeah," I heard myself say. "Everything was fine. Quiet night. Good, good." She disappeared into the office. I clocked out at 6:59 a.m., walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and stared at the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. A notification from the MediQuick employee app. Schedule updated. Night shift, 11 p.m., 7 a.m., Sunday, November 17th. Tonight. I was scheduled for tonight. I started the car and drove home as the sun came up over the dying strip mall, over the pharmacy that became something else after midnight, over the parking lot where shapes pressed against windows and cleaning crews opened doors to places that shouldn't exist. And I knew, absolutely knew, that I'd be back tonight. Just like I'd been back every night for weeks. Just like I'd be back every night until I figured out how to break the loop, or until I joined the others who'd tried and failed and now counted pills forever in the dark. I didn't sleep when I got home. Couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw faceless janitors drawing symbols in darkness, saw shapes pressing against glass, saw the girl's ancient eyes staring at me from a child's face. So instead, I sat on my couch with all the lights on, drinking coffee that had gone cold, staring at my phone. The employee app showed my schedule clearly. Night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., starting tonight. I tried to delete it, pressed the little X, selected Remove from Schedule, confirmed the action. The app had cycled through its loading animation, then refreshed to show the exact same shift still there, like I'd never tried to remove it at all. I'd called the store 3 times. Each time, the phone had rung and rung and rung, never going to voicemail, never being picked up, just infinite ringing until I gave up and disconnected. Around 2 in the afternoon, I tried to look up the district manager, Patricia, the tired woman who'd hired me. The MediQuick corporate website listed her contact information, but when I called, the number was disconnected. When I searched for her name online, I found nothing. No LinkedIn profile, no social media presence, no trace of her existence beyond that single interview in an office I was now half convinced I'd imagined. I looked up Dennis next. His Facebook profile existed, last updated 3 months ago. Photos of a gray-haired man with reading glasses at what looked like a nephew's graduation. Nothing sinister, nothing strange, just a middle-aged guy with a boring life and a pharmacy manager job. I sent him a message. "Dennis, it's Maya from MediQuick. I need to talk to you about the night shift. Please call me." The message went through but showed no read receipt. No response came. By 6 p.m., I'd convinced myself I wasn't going back. I'd simply not show up. They could fire me, blacklist me, whatever. I'd find another job. Plenty of places needed overnight workers. Gas stations, hotels, warehouses. I didn't need MediQuick. By 8 p.m., I was thinking about the money. $2 more per hour than day shift. Over the course of a year, that added up. And my rent had just increased. And my car needed new tires. And where else was I going to find overnight work that paid this well with my limited experience? By 9 p.m., I was thinking about what the girl had said. The store doesn't let go easily. You'll find reasons to come back. The reasons will feel real. They'll feel like your choice. By 10:30 p.m., I was putting on my burgundy vest and getting in my car. The drive to the strip mall felt different. Longer somehow, even though I knew the route by memory now. The streetlights seemed dimmer. The other cars on the road felt less real, like props in a movie, there to fill space, but not actually going anywhere. The parking lot was empty, except for 2 cars I didn't recognize. The lights from the 24-hour gym next door were off. Strange, because they were always on. When had the gym closed? I sat in my car for 5 minutes, engine running, telling myself I could still leave. I could put the car in reverse, drive away, never come back. Instead, I turned off the engine and walked to the employee entrance. The door opened before I could insert my key, just swung inward on its own, revealing the dim stockroom with its cardboard smell and its buzzing fluorescent lights. "Hello?" I called out. No response. The break room was empty, the office door closed and dark. No sign of Dennis or anyone else. I clocked in using the fingerprint scanner. It beeped its acceptance, displayed my name and the time. 10:47 p.m., 13 minutes early. I was 13 minutes early for a shift I'd sworn I wouldn't work. The store floor was quiet when I walked out. Empty aisles, products perfectly faced forward, everything in its designated place. The register waited for me like an old friend, like it had been waiting all day for me to return. I turned it on, counted the drawer, 200 even, same as always, and settled in behind the counter. The protocol card was still in my vest pocket. I hadn't taken it out since yesterday morning, hadn't looked at it all day, had tried not to think about it, but I could feel its weight there, constant and present. My phone showed full signal now. 5 bars, perfect reception. I pulled up my messages to Dennis, still no response, and started typing a text to my best friend Sarah. "If something happens to me, I'm at MediQuick Pharmacy on..." My phone went dark. Not dead. When I pressed the power button, it showed 73% battery, but the screen wouldn't light up, wouldn't respond to any touch or button press, just dead weight in my hand. I set it on the counter and looked at the clock, 11:04 p.m. The automatic doors opened. An elderly couple shuffled in, moving with synchronized steps that reminded me too much of the cleaning crew. They went directly to aisle 8, pain relief, and emerged a few minutes later with a shopping basket full of items I couldn't quite see clearly. When they checked out, they didn't speak, didn't make eye contact, paid in exact change down to the penny. The receipt printed normally. They took it without being asked and left. Nothing strange, nothing wrong, just odd enough to set my teeth on edge. More customers came as the night progressed, all of them slightly off in ways I couldn't articulate, too quiet, too precise in their movements, buying things in multiples of 3 or 7 or 13, never even numbers, paying in exact change, taking their receipts without prompting. By midnight, I'd processed maybe 20 transactions, and not one had felt entirely real. The saline solution woman didn't come back. No one in a hospital gown appeared. No well-dressed woman asked for aisle 7. The cleaning crew didn't show. The returners stayed away. Everything was normal, which somehow made it worse. Like the store was being good, was on its best behavior, lulling me into thinking last night had been an aberration, a one-time glitch. But I knew better. At 12:47 a.m., the exact time the saline woman had appeared last night, the automatic doors opened and stayed open. No one entered. The sensors just triggered. The doors slid apart and remained that way. Through them, I could see the parking lot. Still empty, still normal, except the darkness beyond the parking lot lights seemed deeper than it should be, thicker, like it was gathering itself, preparing. I pulled out the protocol card and read through it again. 8 rules, none of which specifically covered what to do when the doors opened on their own and stayed open. The temperature dropped, not dramatically, just a few degrees, enough to notice, enough to make me wish I'd brought a sweater. At 1:03 a.m., the doors finally closed. At 1:15 a.m., my phone came back to life. The screen lit up, showing 17 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemails, just calls, one after another, each one lasting exactly 47 seconds before disconnecting. I tried to call the number back. It rang once, then I heard my own voice. "Mediquick Pharmacy, this is Maya. How can I help you?" "I need to speak to Maya," my voice said back to me. "It's urgent." "This is Maya," I said, my throat tight. "No," my voice replied. "Not yet, but you will be. After the loop completes, after you've been here long enough." The line went dead. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode if I moved too quickly. The clock showed 2:34 a.m. Time was jumping again. I'd just checked my phone at 1:15, and now suddenly it was 2:34. Over an hour gone in what felt like seconds. I checked the security footage, scrolling through the timestamp. The recording showed me standing behind the register for the full hour and 19 minutes. Not frozen, moving normally, shifting my weight, adjusting my vest, staring at nothing, like I'd been awake but not present, operating on autopilot while my consciousness was somewhere else. What had I done during that time? Had anyone come in? Had I helped them? The register log showed 3 transactions during that missing time, all returning items, all dated for future months. Total refunds, 234.67. I had no memory of processing them. "It's starting," a voice said. I spun around. The girl stood at the end of aisle 3, visible just past the end cap display of cold and flu medications. Still in her nightgown, still barefoot, still wrong in every way. "Starting?" I managed. "The forgetting," she said. "You're losing time now. Soon you won't remember anything. You'll just work your shift, night after night, following the script, like all the others." "I won't let that happen. That's what Dennis said. 3 months ago, he was standing where you are, saying the same thing. Now he's," she gestured vaguely, "somewhere else, part of the store in a different way." "Where is he?" "Close," she said. "Closer than you think." She walked down the aisle toward me, her bare feet making no sound on the linoleum. When she reached the register, she pulled out a piece of paper from somewhere in her nightgown, the same crumpled notebook paper from last night. "It's time," she said, placing it on the counter. The same childish handwriting in crayon, "Medicine for sleeping." The same adult handwriting below, the kind that doesn't wake up. "I don't have what you're asking for," I said. "We don't carry that. We can't carry that. It's illegal. You do have it," she interrupted. "In aisle 7, you always get it from aisle 7. Aisle 7 doesn't exist. Not for everyone," she agreed. "But it exists for you, for night shift workers, for people the store has claimed. You can go there. You just have to want to." "I don't want to." "Yes, you do." She leaned forward, those ancient eyes boring into mine. "Part of you knows this is the only way out. Help me, complete the transaction, close the loop, or refuse and stay here forever, losing time, losing memory, until there's nothing left of Maya Torres except a body in a burgundy vest doing its job." My hands gripped the counter edge, the same position I'd been in when the pharmacist had spoken to me, when the cleaning crew had done their work, a position that was becoming habitual, a physical manifestation of holding on while everything else fell apart. "What happens if I help you?" I asked. "I take the medicine," she said simply. "I go home. I sleep forever, and the loop breaks, because you'll have done what you were always supposed to do. The store will be satisfied. It'll let you go. And if I refuse, then we do this again tomorrow night, and the night after, and the night after that. Each time, you'll remember less. Each time, you'll be more like them." She pointed toward the pharmacy counter, where shadows moved behind the security glass, even though it was only 2:41 a.m., still 19 minutes before the third rule applied. I looked at the paper, at the request written in 2 different hands, child and adult, past and future, cause and effect tangled together. "Why me?" I asked. "Why do I have to be the one to do this?" "Because you're the one who's here," she said. "Because the store chose you. Because Dennis left and someone had to take his place. The night shift always needs someone, always needs a worker who will follow the rules, process the transactions, keep the store running between midnight and dawn." "This isn't a store," I said. "Not really. It's something else. Something wearing a store's shape." She smiled. "Now you're understanding." The automatic doors opened. Not the slow, mechanical slide of the sensors being triggered. They slammed open, hard and fast, and through them came a figure I recognized. Dennis, but wrong. His skin had a gray cast to it. His eyes were sunken, shadowed. He wore his Mediquick vest, but it was stained with something dark. He walked with that same mechanical precision as the saline woman, as the elderly couple, as all the customers who weren't quite real. He walked directly to the register, directly to me. "Maya," he said, his voice flat, affectless. "I need to return something." He placed a laminated card on the counter, the protocol card, my protocol card. Except it wasn't mine, it was his. I could see his name written in faded ink on the back. Dennis Carpenter, night manager. "I don't need this anymore," he said. "I've completed my shift, permanently." I looked at the card, then at Dennis, then at the girl, who watched with patient interest. "What happened to you?" I whispered. "I refused," Dennis said. "Refused to help her. Thought I could break the pattern by not participating. But the store doesn't accept refusal. It just keeps you, makes you part of itself. I'm not night manager anymore. I'm just here, forever here, processing returns from a future I'll never reach, helping customers who died years ago, working a shift that never ends." He picked up his protocol card. "Don't make my mistake, Maya. Follow the rules. Complete the transaction. It's the only way out." Then he turned and walked back toward the pharmacy area. disappearing behind the counter, behind the security glass, into the shadows where the figure in the white coat waited. The girl smiled sadly at me. "See? I told you he was close." The clock showed 5:03 a.m. Time had jumped again. Hours gone in what felt like minutes. The missing time was accelerating, consuming more and more of my awareness. "You're running out of time," the girl said. "Soon it'll be 6 a.m. and the window will close. The loop will reset. Tomorrow night, you'll remember even less. Eventually, you won't remember at all. You'll just work your shift, following the script, helping me get my medicine, over and over, forever." "Where is aisle 7? I heard myself ask. She pointed toward the back corner, the same place I'd investigated before, where there was nothing but a wall. "It's always been there," she said. "You just had to be ready to see it." I looked. The wall was still there, solid and real. But in the security mirror, in the reflection, I could see it. Aisle 7, flickering like a bad signal, stocked with bottles that had no proper labels, just strings of numbers that hurt to read. "Go," the girl said. "Get the medicine. Help me complete the transaction. Free yourself." My legs moved, not because I'd decided to move them, but because the store wanted me to move. And I'd been here long enough that the distinction between my choices and the store's needs was blurring. I walked toward the back corner, toward the wall that was also an aisle, toward a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. And behind me, I heard the girl following, her bare feet silent on the linoleum, patient as death, old as the darkness outside the windows. The clock showed 5:17 a.m. 43 minutes until Carla arrived. 43 minutes to break the loop or become part of it forever. The wall in front of me was solid beige plaster, marked with scuff marks and the faded outline where a poster had once hung. I could touch it, my palm pressed flat against its surface, feeling the slight texture of old paint and years of accumulated grime. But when I looked at the security mirror, aisle 7 was there, clear as any of the other 17 aisles. The plastic sign hanging from the ceiling, the shelves stocked with bottles, the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. "You have to choose to see it," the girl said from behind me. "It exists in the space between what is and what the store needs to be. You're part of the store now, enough of you anyway, so you can see it if you want to. And if I don't want to, then you're choosing to stay, choosing to become like Dennis. The store is patient. It doesn't mind keeping you." I closed my eyes, took a breath, tried to think clearly through the fog that had been settling over my mind for hours now, thick and suffocating. The protocol card was still in my pocket. I pulled it out and read the rules one more time. 8 instructions. None of them said, "Enter aisle 7." None of them said, "Help the girl." They were all prohibitions, warnings, guidelines for avoiding danger. But they didn't tell me how to escape. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the rules weren't meant to protect me at all, just to keep me functional long enough to serve the store's purposes. Keep the night shift running. Keep the transactions flowing. Keep the loop turning. "What's really in aisle 7? I asked, eyes still closed. "What you need," the girl said. "What I need. The medicine that helps people sleep forever. Bottles of it. Dozens of them. Always in stock. The store provides for its customers. Its real customers. Yes. The ones who come after midnight. Yes. The dead ones. Silence. Then, not all of them are dead yet. Some are just adjacent to death. Close enough to shop here. Close enough to need what we offer." I opened my eyes and looked at her. Really looked, past the surface of child features and white nightgown, trying to see what was underneath. For just a moment, the fluorescent lights flickered, and I saw her as she really was, old, ancient, something that had been 8 years old a very long time ago, that had been coming to this store night after night for years, decades maybe, looking for medicine that would let her finally stop. Stop returning, stop asking, stop existing in this horrible in-between state. "How long have you been doing this?" I whispered. "I don't remember anymore," she said, and for the first time, she sounded tired, genuinely tired, not playing at weariness, but actually exhausted by the weight of uncounted years. Long enough that I've forgotten what it felt like to be alive. I just want to sleep, really sleep, forever, and I'm supposed to help you do that. Someone has to. That's what the night shift is for. That's what you're for. The clock in my peripheral vision showed 5:23 a.m., 37 minutes left. I looked back at the wall, at the space where aisle 7 existed and didn't exist simultaneously. "If I go in there," I said slowly, "if I get what you're asking for and give it to you, what happens to me?" "You'll have completed the transaction," she said. "The loop will close. The store will be satisfied. You'll be able to leave." "Will I remember any of this?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. The ones who successfully complete their shifts and leave, they don't usually come back to tell me what they remember. But there have been others who got out. Sometimes," she admitted. "Not often. Most refuse like Dennis did, or they break other rules and become part of the store in different ways. But sometimes someone follows through. Someone helps me, and then they don't show up for their next shift. I assume that means they're free." I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. She didn't know. She was guessing. For all I knew, helping her would just trap me deeper, would make me more fully a part of whatever this place was. But refusing had already claimed Dennis. Refusing meant staying, meant losing more and more time until there was nothing left of me but a body in a vest going through eternal motions. At least helping her was active. At least it was a choice. "Okay," I said, "I'll do it." Relief washed over her face. Genuine relief. The first real emotion I'd seen from her beyond ancient weariness and patient hunger. I turned back to the wall and made myself want to see aisle 7. Not just acknowledge it in the mirror, but actually see it, believe it, accept it as real. The wall rippled. Like water disturbed by a stone, the plaster surface undulated and flexed. The scuff marks and discoloration spread apart, making room for something else. Something that had always been there, but that I'd been trained by a lifetime of normal reality to ignore. Aisle 7 materialized. Not gradually. One moment it wasn't there, the next it was, as if my perception had simply clicked into a different frequency. The aisle was narrower than the others, the lights dimmer, flickering with an irregular rhythm that made my eyes water. The shelves were metal, not the usual white wire racks, and they held bottles that were all identical. Dark glass, no labels, just strings of white numbers printed directly on the glass itself. I walked forward. The transition from the main store to aisle 7 felt like walking through a soap bubble, a moment of resistance, a thin membrane of surface tension, and then I was through. The air was different here, colder, staler, like being in a room that hadn't been opened in years. The fluorescent lights buzzed at a frequency that was almost subsonic, making my teeth ache and my stomach turn. The bottles sat in perfect rows. I picked one up. The glass was ice cold, painful to hold. The numbers printed on it meant nothing to me. 77 to 43, 19, 08, 52. No brand name, no drug name, no dosage information, just numbers. I carried it back toward the entrance of aisle 7, where the girl waited on the other side of that invisible membrane. "This?" I asked, holding it up. She nodded. "That's it. That's what I need." I stepped back through the membrane, that same bubble pop sensation, and handed her the bottle. She took it with both hands, cradling it like something precious. The dark glass seemed to warm in her grip, the cold leaching into her skin. "Thank you," she said, and she sounded like a child again, just a tired little girl who wanted to go to sleep. "Thank you, Maya. What do I do now?" I asked. "Do I ring it up? Process the transaction?" "No," she said. "This one's already paid for. Paid for a long time ago. I just needed someone to get it for me." She turned and walked toward the automatic doors. They opened for her, and morning light spilled in. Real morning light, the kind that comes right before dawn, gray and soft and gentle. She paused at the threshold, silhouetted against the growing light. "You should go home now," she said. "Get some sleep. Real sleep, not the kind I'm going to get. And maybe don't come back tomorrow night. Will you?" I started to ask, but she was already gone, walking out into the parking lot that now showed the first hints of sunrise on the horizon. The doors closed behind her. I stood in the empty store, holding nothing, feeling like I'd just given away something important without understanding what it was. The clock showed 5:47 a.m. Behind me, I heard a sound. The pharmacy lights flickered one last time, then went dark, completely dark. Not the dim standby mode, but actually off. Through the security glass, I could no longer see any movement, any shadows, any sign of the figure in the white coat. The cleaning crew's symbols on the floor, the ones I'd seen in the mirrors, the ones that should have been impossible, were gone. Just clean linoleum, slightly worn but normal. Aisle 7, when I looked back at the corner, was a wall again. Just a wall. The security mirror showed only what my eyes showed. Beige plaster, scuff marks, the faded poster outline. My phone vibrated. A text from the MediQuick employee app. Schedule update, night shift removed. Contact manager to discuss new availability. The shift was gone. Just like that, removed from my schedule like it had never existed. I checked my call log. The 17 missed calls from my own voice were gone. Checked my messages. The text to Sarah that I'd started to write about if something happened to me had disappeared mid-composition, like I'd never begun typing it. The store was resetting itself, erasing evidence, returning to normal. At 6:02 a.m. I was still standing there, trying to process what had happened, when someone shook my shoulder. I jumped, spinning around with my heart hammering. Carla stood there, coffee in hand, looking concerned. "Maya, you okay? You were just standing here staring at nothing." My mouth was dry. "What time is it?" "Little past 6. I came in early." "You look exhausted, hun. Rough night?" I tried to remember, tried to pull up the details of my shift. The saline woman, the hospital gown man, the girl. It all felt distant, dreamlike, like something I'd seen in a movie once, not something I'd lived through. I'm not sure," I said. Carla frowned. "Dennis quit, couple months back. Just didn't show up one night. Sent an email saying he was done. Corporate's been scrambling to fill the night manager position. You interested? They're offering a raise." Dennis quit? But I'd just seen him, hadn't I? He'd been here, returning his protocol card, warning me. "Yeah, back in September. That's why we needed night shift help so badly. We've been running with temps and borrowed staff from other stores. You've been doing a great job, though. Really reliable." I pulled out my phone to check when I'd started. October 2nd. That's what my badge said, what my hiring paperwork said. But September was 2 months ago, not 1. How long had I actually been working here? "Maya, you sure you're okay?" Carla set down her coffee and really looked at me. "You seem confused. Did something happen?" "No," I said automatically. "No, everything's fine. Just tired." "Well, go home, get some rest. We can talk about the manager position later if you're interested. The money's better, and honestly, you'd be perfect for it. You already know the night shift routine. night shift routine. The words sent a chill through me. I looked around the store. Normal fluorescent lights, normal aisles, normal products on normal shelves. 17 aisles, numbered sequentially, each one exactly where it should be. Actually, I said, surprising myself, I think I'm going to take some time off. Maybe switch to day shift if there's an opening. Carla raised her eyebrows. Really? I thought you liked nights. You've never complained about it. Never complained. Because I didn't remember complaining. Didn't remember most of the nights at all. Just fragments. Pieces of a puzzle that didn't want to fit together. I'm ready for a change, I said firmly. Okay, sure. I'll put in the request. Might take a week or two to shuffle the schedule around. She picked up her coffee again. Go on, get out of here. Clock out. Go home. I clocked out at 6:09 a.m. Walked through the stockroom. Past the break room where the coffee pot sat empty. Past the office where Dennis had spent so much time on the phone that first night I remembered. Or had it been the first night? How many nights had there been that I didn't remember? I pushed through the employee exit into the morning. The parking lot was normal. Cars arriving for the gym next door. Highway traffic humming in the distance. The strip mall waking up for another day of struggling commerce and minimum wage labor. My car was where I'd parked it. Normal, solid, real. I got in and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, trying to feel whether I was really free or whether this was just another layer of the loop, another level of forgetting. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't have saved. Thank you. I'm sleeping now, really sleeping. You helped me. You're free. I stared at the message, tried to reply. Number not in service. Of course. I drove home as the sun came up properly, golden light spilling over the city, burning away the darkness and all the things that lived in it. My apartment looked exactly as I'd left it. Coffee cup still on the counter from yesterday. Lights still on from when I'd tried and failed to sleep. I turned off the lights, drew the curtains, got into bed, and I slept. Really slept, deeply and dreamlessly, for 14 hours straight. When I woke, it was evening again. The sun setting, darkness approaching. I checked my phone. 7:43 p.m. The MediQuick employee app still showed my schedule. Day shifts starting next week. No overnight shifts. Nothing after midnight. I pulled my vest from the chair where I'd tossed it that morning. Reached into the pocket for the protocol card. It wasn't there. Just a blank laminated square. The same size and shape, but completely white. No text. No rules. No handwritten note on the back. I turned it over and over in my hands. And for just a moment, I thought I saw something. Words fading, visible only at certain angles in certain light. Thank you for your service. The night shift appreciates your dedication. Then nothing, just blank, white plastic. I put the vest in a bag for donation. I wouldn't need it anymore. Carla would get me a new one for day shift, and this one, with whatever it had absorbed from those nights I couldn't fully remember, could go somewhere else. Be someone else's problem. My phone rang. Sarah finally calling back. Hey, she said, bright and cheerful. Sorry I missed your texts. Crazy day. Want to grab dinner? You sound like you had a rough night. I did, I said, but it's over now. Everything okay? I looked out my window. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. Beautiful and normal. And completely mundane. Yeah, I said. Everything's fine. We made plans for dinner. I showered, changed, tried to feel like a normal person living a normal life. But as I was leaving my apartment, I glanced back at the bag with the vest in it. And for just a second, I could have sworn I saw something moving in the bag. Something small and white, like fingers or pages, rustling in a breeze that didn't exist. I closed the door firmly and left. 3 weeks later, I was working day shifts at MediQuick. Normal hours, normal customers, normal transactions. I'd settled into the rhythm of it. The morning rush of people picking up prescriptions, the lunch crowd buying snacks and energy drinks, the afternoon lull, the early evening chaos. Carla had stopped asking me about the night manager position. Someone else had taken it, a transfer from another store, a guy named Marcus, who seemed competent and normal and who never mentioned anything strange about the overnight hours. I'd drive past the store sometimes at night just to see. The lights were always on, cars in the parking lot. Everything looked normal through the windows, but I never went in after dark, never even felt tempted. One afternoon, a woman came through my line buying vitamins. As I scanned her items, I asked, "Did you find everything okay?" "Yes," she said, though I was looking for aisle 7 at first. Got confused. Silly me. My hand froze over the scanner. "Aisle 7, I repeated carefully. "The vitamin aisle," she said, smiling. "I thought it was aisle 7, but your colleague directed me to aisle 4. All worked out though." "Right," I said, finishing the transaction with hands that had started shaking slightly. "Aisle 4, vitamins and supplements." She took her bag and left. I checked my schedule. I'd been working aisle 4 that day, all day. No one else had been on the floor to direct her. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. "The store misses you. There's always a place on the night shift if you want to come back." I blocked the number. Another text came immediately from a different number. "We're always here, Maya. Always open. 24 hours a day. Whenever you're ready." I turned off my phone. It's been 3 months now since that last overnight shift. I can't fully remember. I work days exclusively. I sleep normal hours. I've started seeing a therapist, though I don't tell her the real reason. Just say I have some anxiety about work, about night shifts, about time getting away from me. She prescribes sleeping pills. I don't fill the prescription. Last week, I was cleaning out my car and found something wedged under the passenger seat. A small white bag with the MediQuick logo on it. Inside was a bottle of dark glass with numbers printed on it. 77 to 43 19 08 52. The same bottle I'd given the girl, except I'd given it to her. I'd watched her take it and leave. So why was it in my car? I threw it away, drove to a gas station 3 miles away and threw it in their dumpster, not wanting it in my trash, not wanting it anywhere near me. That night, it was back under my passenger seat. I threw it away again. It came back again. Now I just leave it there. Don't touch it. Don't look at it. Pretend it doesn't exist. Sometimes, when I'm driving at night, I see a little girl in a white nightgown standing at bus stops, at crosswalks, in parking lots. She never waves, never acknowledges me, just stands there, watching. And sometimes, just sometimes, when I check my MediQuick employee app, there's a shift that shouldn't be there. Night shift, 11 p.m., 7 a.m. Optional, no pressure. Whenever you're ready to come back. I never click on it, never acknowledge it, but it's always there, waiting, like the store itself, always open, always ready, always needing someone to work the night shift. I saw Marcus's car in the parking lot this morning when I came in for my day shift. He looked tired, more tired than someone should look after a single overnight shift. His eyes had that distant quality I recognized, that slight glaze that said he'd seen something he couldn't quite process, couldn't quite remember. "How was your night?" I asked him in the break room. "Fine," he said automatically. "Quiet, normal." He was lying, or he believed he was telling the truth because he'd already started forgetting. I wanted to warn him, wanted to tell him about the rules, about the protocol card, about everything. But I didn't, because maybe he'd be the one to break the cycle for real. Maybe he'd be smarter than me, stronger than Dennis, better at following the rules, or better at knowing when to break them. Or maybe he'd just become another part of the store, another night shift worker who'd always been there, who'd always be there, working his shifts forever in an eternal present that never quite became tomorrow. I clocked in for my day shift, helped my normal customers, and tried not to think about what was happening in the store after I left each evening. Tried not to wonder if I'd really escaped, or if I was just in a different part of the loop now. Tried not to notice that sometimes, when I glanced at my name tag, the date it showed for my start date kept changing. October 2nd, September 15th, August 3rd, July 20th. Further and further back, like I'd been working here longer and longer, like the store was slowly rewriting my history to make me more completely its own. I'm writing this down now while I still remember enough to write it, while I still know that something wrong happened, even if the details are getting fuzzier. If you're reading this, if you found this somehow, maybe I left it in the break room, maybe I posted it online, maybe it got to you some other way, and if you work at a MediQuick pharmacy or any 24-hour pharmacy or any overnight retail job where strange things happen after midnight, follow the rules they give you, all of them, even the ones that don't make sense, especially the ones that don't make sense. Don't try to understand. Don't try to fight. Don't try to help. Just follow the rules and survive until morning. And if you can, if there's any possible way to avoid it, don't work the night shift, because some jobs don't end when you clock out. Some jobs never end at all. My phone is buzzing. Another text from an unknown number. I don't want to look, but I do anyway. Your shift starts in 3 hours, Maya. See you tonight. I check the employee app. There it is, added to my schedule despite everything. Night shift, 11 p.m., 7 a.m. Sunday, February 16th, 2026. That's tonight. I'm going to go. I know I'm going to go, because the store doesn't let go. And I think, maybe, I never really left at all.